Are India and China rethinking their neutrality on Ukraine? I know it sounds impossible, but here's why I ask. Last week, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution. It was pretty routine stuff. The resolution talked about cooperation between the United Nations and the Council of Europe. Quick side note. The Council of Europe is a human rights organization. It has 46 member states, most of them in Europe. Its job? To defend human rights, democracy and rule of law. Now, coming back to the United Nations, 122 countries voted in favor of the resolution, 18 countries abstained, only 5 opposed. Do you know what India and China did? Both supported the resolution. And why is this significant? Because of the language used in the document. Listen to this. The General Assembly recognizes the unprecedented challenges now facing Europe following the aggression by the Russian Federation against Ukraine and against Georgia prior to that. Let me repeat. Aggression by the Russian Federation. That is not neutral language. That language clearly mentions who is the aggressor and who is the victim. It's just short of calling it a war, which is why India and China's support is raising eyebrows. Remember, neither country has called it a war. Neither country has accused Russia of aggression. So why have they supported this resolution at the United Nations? And more importantly, does it signal a change in policy? I'll answer the second question first. No, there is no change in policy. The vote was probably prompted by the broader resolution. Russia is just mentioned twice in the text. The rest of it talks about generic stuff like the pandemic, democracy, sustainable development. Important but non-controversial things. Perhaps that's why India and China voted in favor. Having said that, we cannot totally dismiss this development, and I'll give you 2 reasons why. Number one, the West is going to town with it. They see this as a symbolic victory against Russia. Take a look at what the EU's foreign policy chief is saying. Resolution adopted by 122 votes, including key partners such as India, Brazil, China, and Indonesia. The resolution clearly qualifies war against Ukraine as aggression by the Russian Federation. Well, he's not wrong, because the resolution does exactly that, and countries like India, China, and Brazil did support it. These are all countries that have remained neutral so far. Now, the second reason why this is an important development. Voting for or against the resolution was not the only option. India could have abstained from the vote. It's done it in the past. South Africa abstained, for instance. Tajikistan and Uzbekistan abstained. So did Iran. And these countries are very close to Russia. Tajikistan and Uzbekistan are treaty allies of Moscow. Yet they chose to abstain. So why didn't India and China do the same? Only the governments can answer that question, especially Beijing. They've even proposed a peace plan to end the war. 12 points, 0 takers. Even that plan does not use the word Russian aggression. It talks about the quote-unquote Ukraine crisis. That's what China calls it. So symbolically, this vote will raise questions. Could China be looking to squeeze Russia or maybe pressure Moscow into offering concessions? At the moment, this is all speculation, but the larger picture is this. The longer this war drags on, the more pain countries will feel. More inflation, more supply chain issues, more shortages. If that turns into public outrage, every country will be forced to rethink. Have we reached that point yet? Definitely not. Until then, we must take the symbolism out of the resolutions. It's not a political win as the West would like to call it. Neither is it a setback for Russia. Because sometimes diplomacy is more complicated than a yes or no.